Hi! Welcome to All the Things. I am your host, Lauren Alexander, and we got a brand new season for you with some great friends of mine. The first friend tonight being my friend Heidi Hinkle. Say hey, girl.
Hey!
And why don't you just start off by introducing yourself a little bit, and then we'll jump right in.
I'm Heidi Hinkle. I'm from Knox County. I was born and raised in Vincennes most of my life. I'm a Navy brat, so I moved around a lot as a little kid. But now I live close to Decker. We just recently moved there, my husband and I, and my 3 children. And I'm a nurse at the hospital. What else?
So you're going through a reno too. And
Yeah.
actually we were just talking about the renovation life, and if you don't know, but you're a viewer here, I want you to know that we're sitting in the exact same place that we have always filmed the show. It's just that we're getting a kitchen where a dining room used to be, and we're under construction. I don't even have my table that we normally sit at, so we're actually using my sink space.
It's like a sneak peek.
Yeah, it's like a little ahead of the schedule. And I finally got my oven, and hopefully our contractor will be able to come soon and hook it up for us. We're really excited about that. And then I got a new fridge over here. It's really beautiful. But there's just nowhere really else to film the show. So anyway, you guys get a cool little sneak peek into what's happening here. And I want to tell you about a couple things before we dive in with Heidi. One of those things is the All the Things retreat. It is coming up November 2nd and 3rd, and I'm really excited about that. It's going to be at Camp Ileana in Washington, and so we would love so much if you would like to come to that retreat, ladies. We would love to have you. We have several spots left, and what we're going to do tonight, which I'm really excited about because I love giving stuff away. Okay, we're going to give away a half-price registration tonight. So what we need you to do, if you want to enter into that, you can share this, and even if you don't want to win, still share it. It's still really fun to let your friends see the show, and hopefully they'll join in and join us on Tuesday nights too. Yes. And so hit that share button, and also maybe take a minute just to tell people what you like about the show so that they know what it's about. They just see my head, and then they don't know what we do here, and so maybe just tell them why you like the show too. But if you'll share that and then come back and tell us, Seth's going to draw a name tonight for a half-price registration if you're interested. So we'd love to hear more about why you like the show and also try to get the word out. So we appreciate that. Anyway, if you'd like to come, Seth will put the link up to the Eventbrite page, and you can read all about what we're going to do. This year I'm really excited because we're doing Vintage Revelation Company, which is something that Heidi and I both really dig.
Yes.
Our friend Larcy Emmert runs a group called Vintage Revelation Company, and she's a thrifter, and so she teaches all of us less good thrifters how to be better thrifters. I shouldn't lump us all in there as bad thrifters, but some of us are. Yes. So we're learning how to be better at it, and we're actually doing a really fun swap at the retreat this year. We're going to bring like 3 to 5 new things or older things from us, and then trade it out for somebody else's treasures. So it's going to be really fun. We want you to come. You're going to hear the Word of God. Going to hear some worship. You came last year.
Oh yeah, I'm signed up already.
Oh, girl,
that's right.
I love you. I didn't tell her to say that. Anyway, thanks, girl. Also, if you like these guys, my friend Martha, she sells New Day collection, and this is my favorite piece of all this fall's new wine that just launched. So Seth's gonna put up a link to these little babies. They're so beautiful. Just go buy them, and you know what?
They're even better in person.
Thank you for saying that. I love them. Anyway, you can support fair trade. And you can help people have a dignified wage for what they're doing. And we're going to talk more about that with the Faith Store later. So thank you. That's all the commercials I have for tonight. Aren't you glad? Okay, let's dive in. So Heidi, you're a nurse.
Yes.
How did you end up on that career path after traveling around as a Navy brat your whole life? Like, tell me the process of picking a career like nursing.
So I actually started out school at Purdue University and was... Yes, and I was an elementary ed major, actually. And that's whenever I met your husband, Seth.
That's right. Tell him that story. That's really funny. It's like, how many years ago did you guys say?
Oh, gosh. It would have been like, 17 or 18 years ago. Seth, you went to Ball State?
Yes.
Right. And Purdue and IU had a spring break all at the same time, and all of the Baptist churches came together and went on a mission trip together, and we're going to talk about missions tonight too.
Yes, we are.
So this was my first ever mission trip. We went to a place called Rainbow Acres in Arizona. And I don't really remember Seth much from that trip because, like he said earlier, we kind of hung out with different groups or whatever. But I remember going on my walk, and when I went on my walk, I saw Seth in the audience, and he was there to support you. And he was the only person I knew in the entire candlelight. And so I just hugged him and said, "I know you." And I think he was like, "What?" Thought I was crazy, but anyhow.
I think I followed you. I was like after you in the line, and I was like, "Hey, your friend Heidi that you went on the mission trip with," and he was like, "That's who it was." So there you go. I love how God connects us, though, because who would have ever dreamed, you know, years and years later, you and I would be friends.
Right.
I think that's so cool, and we'd be practically neighbors, Decker and Bicknell.
Yeah.
So there we go.
So I guess back to nursing. Really, I guess it found me because I was in this LM major, and then I ended up getting married kind of young, and I was 20. And whenever that happened, my husband and I at the time decided for me to move back home, which meant at that time I had to pick a new career because VU didn't have a 4-year program for elementary ed at the time. And so I picked nursing for the same exact reason that I picked teaching, because I just wanted a career where I help people. So anyhow, that's kind of where it all started.
That's so cool. I think about you just being a ray of sunshine for someone who's sick, just walking into their room and lighting it up. You've done that in my life, and I see you do that in other people's lives too, so I really think you did pick the perfect career, and God knows what we need to be doing. But so your nursing your nursing story has kind of changed through the years, though, because now you have kind of a different role at the hospital.
I do.
Do you work directly with patients, or are you just working with mostly the nurses?
Mostly I work with nurses on teams and committees, and other disciplines as well, pharmacists and you know, therapists and different groups. So I'm kind of what they call a quality nurse. That's the best way I can describe it, because it gets really complicated when you say all the terms and stuff. People don't know what that means. So I'm just trying to make care at Good Samaritan better, you know, and just constantly trying to improve it so that when my loved ones are there and my friends and family, that they get the best care that they possibly can.
That's a great mission statement for a nurse to have.
Yeah.
Okay, do you sense that your nursing career has changed you in any way as you have matured as a nurse over the years? How has it changed you, and why do you think that's the case?
Yeah, I definitely think it's changed me in the sense that it's made me more sensitive to other people's dispositions, what they're going through, being able to put myself in their shoes. And honestly, being less judgmental, maybe. You know, I mean, when you think about what Jesus has taught us, and you think about where you stand as a nurse, sometimes we can't say our opinions or what we really believe about a patient situation. We're there to treat that patient with dignity, whether that patient chose bad choices in order to get themselves in that position.
Which I'm sure you see quite a bit.
Absolutely, and that's not our job. And I would hope that lots of nurses learn that throughout their career and learn that it's not their job to place judgment at that moment. It's their job just to love on them in that moment.
That's good. That's good. Tell me about your relationship with God. Were you raised in the church? What was your journey about learning to walk with Jesus like?
I actually wasn't raised in the church. I was raised by a Navy man who and my mother, who are still together to this day. They're great parents. But
is Janet watching tonight?
Yeah, my mom's out there somewhere. Hey, Mom. So my dad had the philosophy when I was growing up that he wanted us to choose our own path, to choose what we wanted to choose.
Right.
And we ended up not really going to church regularly or anything like that. And I was invited to church. Actually, you may know her, Katrina Lukens.
Yeah.
Which is, what is it? Winnicky now. Yeah.
Love that lady.
Yeah, so
she is a disciple maker. She just influences people and just kind of pulls them in.
And you know, she was young. I can remember her saying that she was praying a prayer at that time at like 16 that she would be able to witness to somebody. And that somebody became me. So
that makes me want to cry. That's a really cool story.
Yeah.
Katrina, good job.
Yes. I hope she's watching tonight. Yeah, so anyhow, she invited me to church, and I started going, and throughout my marriage, which I think you want to talk about a little bit, I kind of fell away from that, tried to stay plugged in, fell away some, plugged back in, fell away, and it just was a struggle throughout my marriage to stay connected to God in the way that I needed to be. And so now I'm happy to say that through all of that, my parents go to church now, my dad goes to church now, my brother goes to church now, my grandma goes to church now, my aunt and uncle. And when I say I wasn't raised in a church, I mean nobody in our family was raised in a church. People talk about going to Easter Sunday, you know, with their family at their church and then having dinner together. We would have Christmas dinner at like a bar, like a veterans bar type of place, you know. So that just wasn't what we did.
Part of your history with your family.
Right. But we are growing in that way, and it is really a huge blessing to get to watch your family go in that walk and see all of that. So,
and I think about Katrina again too.
Yeah, look at what she
Could
did.
she have ever known
Yeah.
that this would be such a domino effect, a chain reaction? And that's why I think the people of God need to be so passionate about discipleship, because we never know how many, you know, I saw a statistic once, and I was never able to find it again, but it was basically the number of people that Billy Graham reached through his crusades, and then the number of people reached when one person disciples another person, who disciples another person, who disciples another person. And you would not believe
The difference.
the difference.
Yes.
Yeah, and we don't want to underestimate his ministry at all, because it affected millions and millions of people, but that simple chain reaction of one person being
It's
faithful
simple
to
math. Yeah.
making and grow a disciple, and then they multiply and they multiply and they multiply. And I think about Katrina, she would have never had any idea. And
No.
so that just goes to show, invite people.
Invite people.
Invite
Yes.
people to be a part of your life and your church, and share the gospel with them and see what happens. You never know.
Right.
The
And
worst thing you can hear is no.
And encourage your kids to invite people. I mean,
Yeah.
she was a kid,
That is
inviting
so
a
cool.
kid,
Wow.
you know, and there's power in that. God
I'm
can
gonna
use
try to
anybody. He can
tag
use
her. I
a
hope it'll let
2-year-old.
me.
It doesn't matter. So, yeah, that's big stuff right there.
I'm trying to tag her so she can
Oh.
join us later, but it's not working. Okay, so let me talk to you about this. Let's talk about your first marriage a little bit.
Okay.
We have a lot of viewers who probably have experienced hard marriages, maybe in hard marriages right now, maybe going through a season where it's hard. Can you talk about your first marriage and some of the lessons that God has taught you through that, and some of the school of hard knocks stuff that that you've walked through?
Well, I would say one of the first things, of course, and I kind of touched on this, was just not being centered on God in that
Equally
marriage.
yoked.
Yes. You know, I was definitely a Christian before I became married, but then quickly lost the order, you know, that order of when God is first and then your husband and then your children. I lost that somewhere along the way, and it impacted my life. And I think that I'm not here to advocate for divorce or anything like that. If anything, anybody that ever comes to me and asks about that, God can save anything. He can.
That's right.
He can restore anything. But at that moment, I think it takes two people to be willing for a restoration to happen, and that's just not where we were at that moment. And so I think, though, it was in those moments of the most painful thing I've ever been through, because I never saw myself as a divorced person. I'm going to be really honest and just say that I was really judgy. Like, I can remember being like, oh, they didn't try hard enough. They didn't work hard enough. You know, my parents, I saw them go through lots of trials, and they made it through it all. And I admired that so much that I thought that that would be me. I would never give up. You know, I'm pretty stubborn, so I just didn't think I'd ever give up.
And I don't think anybody goes into marriage thinking, oh, this may fail. You know, that's not typically, I mean, maybe not everybody, but that's not typically a thought that you have.
Yeah.
So
I think the other thing it taught me was, don't be so judgmental. Like, you haven't, until you've walked in those shoes, you really don't know what that person has been through. And I tried to keep it from getting to that point, but that's just the point that it got to. And I think the other thing I learned was that God never left me. And so even though I had turned away from him multiple times, in those really dark moments, that's when I heard him crying out to me the most. And so I can just remember lying on my kitchen floor, you know, and just calling out to him, and him being right there the whole time. And so through that, this has happened. you know. So what you hear about tonight and everything, that all kind of was catapulted through that horrible experience.
Something that you never would have asked for.
Right.
Something that you never would have dreamed would be a reality is exactly what God used. And it's really true, you know. These are not things that we want to happen.
No.
These are things that bring brokenness and pain, and we live in a fallen world, and there's selfishness and there's sin and there's all kinds of things. But at the end of the day, really, the very things that we struggle through the most are the things that often God uses to get our attention. And so we just want to encourage you tonight. You know, and I have found too in our ministry years that divorcees are almost always the most the strongest advocates for strong marriage, because they know the pain that comes with that. And if you're hurting from a divorce, I encourage you to reach out. You can reach out to one of us. You can reach out to someone that you trust that's a godly example to you, and just tell them that you're struggling. Maybe it's 10 years ago, maybe it's 2 months ago, but we just want to be here for you. So if you're struggling through that, we want you to know you're welcome here. And Heidi understands that struggle, so she'd love to minister to you.
Right, and some of those struggles continue. I mean,
let's talk about that a little bit.
Those things don't just go away. I mean, my kids are always going to have to pick this house or that house for Christmas, even when they're adults, even once, you know, parenting guidelines go out the door, they're going to have to decide. And that's not something as a mom I ever wanted for them, you know. I don't want them to have to feel like they have to pick. And I think too, like when you're struggling with, you know, maybe an ex-husband, ex-wife, I don't know if there's guys watching too, but, you know, just remembering that it's all about the kids at that point. Once you get to that point, it's then about the kids, and it's not about winning an argument anymore. It's all about what's best for them. And so that's another kind of takeaway, I guess, from the aftermath.
That being the first piece of co-parenting advice, do you have any other things that you've learned, kind of maybe you started from the beginning, or maybe you had to learn the hard way? Have there been things that you have learned and grown through in that process, besides obviously putting the kids first?
I have learned that when things are starting to get heated, just backing away. Like, there's no reason to be arguing anymore. I mean, the marriage is over with, so let's stop arguing. Like, I thought that was the reason why we are no longer together. So
that's an interesting perspective.
When an
argument starts, like that, it makes so much sense.
It does. It's a lot harder.
I believe that.
But when an argument breaks out, just walk away. It's better for both of you. You don't want to say things that you're going to regret later. This is more of a practical type thing, but I have a family calendar app. And so we kind of created this app, and I put all the kids' stuff in there, and that's my way of being able to share with them all the time. They can bring up the calendar. They know what's going on. My ex-husband lives farther away, so that's good for him so that he can plan ahead and things like that. And honestly, it causes less of the back and forth of, I sent you this calendar, you know, did you get it, you know, and then what kind of argument might ensue from all of that. Like, it just keeps things very simple.
And you know, whether you're at work or whether you're in a situation like this or wherever you are, over communication is often the answer. And in fact, I heard a quote the other day. My friend Clayton King said, you're not responsible for what you intend or what you imply, you're responsible for what you actually communicate. And I thought that was a great word for just situations like this where you're co-parenting with someone else. Over communication is better in some cases as far as clarity is concerned. Now, you don't want to be sending them, you know, novel texts or anything, but I think over communication can really help kind of keep that oil between the, you know, to keep from friction. So, and that's in any relationship. That can apply to lots of different things in our lives. So I think that's really good. And I'm sure that there are so many of the people who are watching who have either experienced that themselves, where they are kids from divorced families where there was co-parenting, and I'm sure they could say what went well and what went poorly, and feel free to share if you want. And then I'm sure that there are going to be people who watch this broadcast who are co-parenting currently, and so we just want you to know we're praying for you. We care about you, and we care that your kids feel loved and safe, and that's why we're talking about this. It's not it's not to make Heidi feel uncomfortable. It's not to, we want to help people here. We want to talk about things that matter to all of you, and so if you have questions or thoughts or concerns, you can either share them during the broadcast, or you can message us later, and we'd love to help you with that.
Absolutely.
Let's see. Oh yeah, we're gonna try to post some more on YouTube. Denise had a great question. Hi Denise. She was asking if people who are not on Facebook can watch this. So we're trying to upload them to YouTube. I have a little YouTube channel. I think I have 2 on there maybe. It takes a long time to upload them because they're an hour long. So anyway, we're working on that. So we will let you know, and hopefully this season as it goes, we'll be able to put those up for you. And then we'll be able to put other ones up later. Thank you for that question. Hey, Robin Riley, how are you doing? We prayed for Lawson on here many times, so it's cool that you're watching tonight.
She is a good friend of mine at work.
Yeah, she's awesome, and they've been through a lot, and they were really strong through it all. So we're so excited he's doing well right now. Oh, yeah, that's great. Okay, so I want to transition a little bit because you mentioned the co-parenting thing. You mentioned, having kids that go back and forth.
Yes.
And there were some unique challenges that you faced with your family, right? And because you're not with them you're not able to be with them all the time, and there was some abuse that your daughter experienced, and it's sort of when you think about it, it's one of a parent's worst fears, and so. You are so brave to talk about this, first of all.
I'm really hoping I don't cry tonight.
And if you do, Seth has tissues over there.
Okay.
So, but I'll join you. What is that? Nobody cries alone in my presence. Steel Magnolias is one of my favorite movies. So there you go. We're laughing because we feel nervous even talking about it, or at least because I know it's such a hard thing to talk about.
It is.
You have her permission, first of all. We want to make that
She's
clear.
very brave.
She is very brave, and she wants to protect other kids, which is why we're talking about this tonight. But we're hoping that all of you parents and all of you out there that advocate for kids will be able to keep them safer due to what Heidi has learned the hard way. So would you just share a little bit of that story tonight?
Yeah. So one of the things that I really want to get across is sometimes I hear people saying things like, a stranger seems kind of creepy to them or something, and they're trying to protect their kids from these people that they don't know really. And I want to really drive home the fact that the statistics say that most likely you're going to know the person, and not just know the person, but they're going to be close to you. So they're going to be a family member or a friend in most cases, and not all, but in a lot of them. And I think that that's the key part there, that because people don't know that, or maybe they do know that, it makes people not want to talk about it because it was their uncle or their grandpa or their aunt or whatever. And so they don't want to cause this huge family divide. They don't want to expose something like this. And then sometimes what ends up happening is the behavior is then repeated because no one wants to talk about it and nobody wants to advocate. Not that they don't want to advocate for their kid, but they don't want to cause some sort of huge drama in their family. And so instead it's just kind of swept under the rug. And kids, sometimes, and even like in my daughter's case, sometimes it's more of a kid on kid type thing. And kids really will repeat the behavior if it's not taken care of. So the perpetrator needs to know that it's wrong, especially if it's a kid. They need to know that it's wrong and that you can't do that. They need to see that they're being punished. The victim, when they get to see those things, they learn, oh, you weren't supposed to do that. They also learn, mom and dad protected me.
Somebody listened to me. Somebody believed me.
Yes.
Because about 95% of the reports are true. You'll only have 5% or less reports about something like that are untrue. The majority of kids who work up the courage to tell you something like that, they had to work up the courage for a long time, first of all, in some cases, and also there aren't very many false reports about this kind of thing. So I think it's so important that we believe kids.
And actually, it happened to my daughter actually twice, which is really horrible, but big, but the first time, it was actually with someone who they had been a victim to, and they thought their parents knew. And so hence why their behavior got repeated was because nobody did anything about it. Now, the parents don't really remember that happening. So that's the other thing, is just being very keyed into what your kids are saying and talking about. I read an article once where someone said that when your kid gets home from a sleepover, stop asking them things like, were you good? You know, of course they're going to say that they were good. Ask them very specific questions like, what did you do? Who did you play with? What were you playing? And ask them questions about that, you know, because a simple game of house can turn into something that it shouldn't.
You're exactly right. I'm like an interrogator when they, and I'm very careful who they stay with, first of all, but I'm like an interrogator when they get home, and they're like, oh, here comes mom again. But you know what? That's how we keep them safe. That's by asking questions and letting them know it would not matter. You know, one of the things we really need to say to our kids is, if they told you you couldn't tell, that is a lie. That is a lie. Nobody's going to hurt me because you told me this.
Absolutely.
Because a lot of times that's what it takes. And also, do you think too that parents need to be kind of keyed in if an adult is sort of like paying extra attention, starting to kind of
like a grooming.
Yes.
And so that actually kind of happened the second time. That's kind of what was going on. Was my daughter was being groomed. She knew something weird was happening, and because I was asking questions, she was like, okay, mom's asking questions, now what do I do? And the look on her face was, she has more information and I need to know what that is. And I'm, you know, because of what happened first, it allowed us to be able to protect her the right way the second go around. And so it never got to a level that would have been really scary, you know, because then it was more of an adult with her, and that could have led to something that I can't even imagine. I'm not saying, you know, don't let your kids around any adults ever, or don't let them sleep over at places or anything like that. I'm just saying, like, pay more attention and pay attention to those cues of, you know, kids sitting on adults' laps and things like that, because they're going to groom them first. They're going to make them feel like if they tell their parents, they're going to get in trouble, or I'm going to get in trouble and you don't want me to get in trouble, right? You know, and that kid's creating a relationship with them, and as sad as it is, they think of it as love. I mean, you know, they don't know the difference. And so that's our job, I guess, to just educate ourselves on the proper way to handle it.
That's so important. And also, I'm thinking about the culture of stranger danger, like the idea that we teach our kids, stay away from strangers. Well, that is well and good, and that's an important part of growing up, is learning that there are that, you know, they have a sense about them. You know, God's given them intuition to be able to follow, and that He has designed them for protection. That sometimes if you don't feel like something's right, that's because you need to hit the road. But I think that in the culture, you know, of the, like, I'm thinking of late 70s, 80s, whenever the stranger danger thing was really popular because kids were, you know, being grabbed or whatever, that we've come so heavy down on don't talk to strangers that we end up, thank you, that we end up, it's like a news show. He's coming around here with my statistic that I needed. Thank you. That, you know, we key in so much on protecting them from strangers that we forget that there are actually people that they know who may not want what's best for them, and just being aware of that, I think, is really, really important too. But having conversations with your kids about where people can touch them and where they can't.
Yes, absolutely.
I talk about bathing suits a lot. Like, if it covers your bathing suit, nobody should be bothering you there. And if you feel uncomfortable, you can tell someone no. You can even tell an adult, no, I don't want to hug you.
Absolutely.
And I had to learn this because I grew up like, go ahead and give him a hug, give him a kiss. I'm still working on this because that's really hard for me. But I'm learning through education. You know, people have written blogs about this, and I was like, what? I was kind of offended at first because I'm like, I'm doing just fine raising my kids. The more I thought about it, the more it made sense to me. You know, if we teach them that their bodies are their own and that they get to decide, it gives them permission to be able to say no in more challenging situations too. So
empowers them.
So I think that those conversations are hard, but I think that they're also really, really important in the world we live in today. So, in fact, Seth gave me a stat. That's what he was handing me right now, which I should have looked at before this, but he did.
It's 1 in 4 girls, right?
By 18, 1 in 8 boys by 18.
Yeah,
and I feel like as the pornography culture grows, this is going to grow up. This number is going to grow too. And so,
absolutely.
Pardon? That's reported. So,
which is
some of the viewers watching right now have things happen to them that they didn't report. I know that to be true, and so This is just the reported stats. So talk to your kids, and thank you for sharing that. And do thank her for being willing to let you talk about this, because I know she wants to see kids be protected too. And this kid's amazing. I wish you guys could meet her. She's so special. She's and God has his hand on her for mighty, mighty things. Okay. Seth, oh, that's good. Sandy's with me on the bathing suit thing. Thank you. Yeah, I will not make my kids hug if they don't want to. Erica, you were a champ. I'm still working on that. Sometimes I forget, and then they'll look at me like, really?
Since we kind of talked about, and some of you may have experienced this yourself, another thing I want to kind of hit on is that through all of this, one thing that God spoke to me about through it all was forgiveness. I see a lot of that too, where Christians think that, I guess, I don't know what it is. Like maybe certain sins are weighted a certain way or something, or something is so grotesque to them that they can't imagine forgiving somebody that would do that to a child or something like that. But one thing I wanted to make sure I said tonight was harboring anger is not where God wants you to be, and Jesus already paid the price. He paid the price for both of the things that happened to my daughter. He paid the price already. And so both of those people are forgiven in his eyes as long as they ask for it. So that's something I kind of wanted to leave with people too, is that if they're harboring anything, we got to forgive.
That's right. And also, I think following up with that is it's really important to remember everybody in Indiana is a mandatory reporter. And so we know that they're forgiven by the Lord, but they still had to walk through the judicial process that they had to go through and answer for their crimes.
Yes.
And so that's really important too, because I think sometimes we, and we've seen in the news and stuff that churches and individuals have been really guilty of trying to sweep these things under the rug.
No.
And that's not what we want to say either. But we do believe in grace. We believe in grace, but we also believe that people should answer for what they've done wrong, and that, give to Caesar what is Caesar's. And so they walked through a judicial process and were judged for those things.
And honestly, those boundaries that you get through reporting it is exactly what that kid needs to protect future kids and to protect them.
Yes.
So both of ours were reported. It was really hard. It's hard on those families. It's hard on the people close to them. It makes
much
for
harder
challenging family get-togethers, but it had to happen to protect people. So make sure that happens.
Yeah, and Seth's I'm sure he may have already done this, put up a link for he's already got it. He's got a link for you if you need to report something.
Yes, to DCS.
Yeah, and let me tell you what, you will never hear from this show to sweep it under the rug, and you know that we protect kids with our ministry and stuff too, so it's so important. These things can happen anywhere, even in really great godly places. And so thank you for sharing that. And I know that our viewers are grateful too, so thank you for being brave about that. I want to take we're just now starting to allow sleepovers for my 11-year-old. It's so scary. It is scary in our world. And it's hard to know sometimes discernment, how to trust. Love you too, Ellen. Thank you for that. Anyway, if you guys have questions or comments, or you just want to share love with Heidi for being so brave tonight, please do that. Okay, let's shift. I know one thing that you said about God's presence is that you've sensed his forgiveness. Was there anything else in that process? Because that is just devastating. I can't even, a lot of us can't even imagine how heart-rending that was. What were some of the ways that God sort of poked his light in as you guys were walking through this to pursue justice and also healing for your daughter, but also for you?
Sure.
In relationships and stuff.
I think one of the biggest things, and this would ring true for all kinds of things that you worry about with your kids, but in that moment of feeling like I failed as a mom because I never thought that would happen to my kids. I mean, I'm not doing that to my kids, so, I'm not that kind of a person, I just never imagined my kids going through that. And so when they did go through it, God just showed up big and said, I've got them. Like, you don't need to be a helicopter mom just because this just now happened. Evil's
that
gonna
would
happen.
be that would be my pendulum swing.
Right, and it would be for
and
a
I
lot
bet
of people.
everybody out there is thinking the same thing. They
It
would
would
never
be.
leave the house again.
Yes,
I mean,
yes.
really, but that's no life for her either.
No,
Right.
no, and they have to be able to get out there. You know, they have to be able to get out in the world too. And so God never promises that bad things aren't going to happen to your kids. They're going to happen. But what he does say is he's going to be there through it all. And so I think that was the light shining through. Because I can remember at one point somebody saying, you know, you're not angry enough. And I thought, well, that was a funny comment. Like, I don't think I got angry really because God was right there the whole time and you could just feel his presence. He's close to those crushed in spirit, you know. And so he was right there and he was just saying, I've got them, you know. So you may not be able to protect them all the time, but I'll always be there. And so I guess that's just the biggest takeaway. And that could be for anything that your kids are struggling with or you're struggling with letting your kids go or do. He's going to take care of it. Even if something bad happens, he's going to take care of it.
Right, and he can still be trusted. And that's really a hard thing, I think, to recover when you walk through something like that. You know, I can't even fathom how hard it is to trust, you know, God and people again. But just to hear you say, I knew that he was going to be faithful, that's really encouraging. And I hope it's encouraging to all of you in your circumstances that God is faithful, that he is right there, that he is listening, that he is, and he will have vengeance too. You know, he cares about our kids more than we do. He's given up far more than we have for them.
Oh yeah, and he would say that, you know, like, you gave birth to them, but they are my children. You know, they are his children before they were mine, and will be long after. And so he's going to take care of them. So
Absolutely. Sorry.
you're fine.
I had a gnat go up my nose just now. I just should be honest about it. Well, that really brings down the mood, doesn't it? I'm sorry. It just went right in there, and there's nothing I can do.
This is real life.
It is real life. And I'm glad that you still have such infectious joy in spite of the circumstances that we've discussed. Let's talk about how God restored some of those years that the locusts had eaten.
Yes.
I believe almost 2 years?
Almost 2 years in October.
Y'all are a cute couple, by the way. They cute. You met a guy.
Yes.
And you met a guy doing mission work, which is like, I didn't know if you'd met him. Did you meet him before?
Yeah, kind of.
Okay.
We went to the same church, but I went on Thursday nights, he went on Sundays, so we didn't really know each other.
Okay.
But through getting ready for the mission week,
And you guys
started
going to Guatemala.
We were going to Guatemala to build a house. And
They were building the house all right.
building.
Anyway, go ahead. They got a house now together.
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead. Sorry.
Nice play on words, Lord.
I'm being kind of cheeky. It's the first show of the season. We gotta have some fun. So.
Yes.
And we talk about hard stuff tonight, so we're gonna laugh a little bit.
Absolutely. So yeah, we went to Guatemala together, and actually Pastor Debbie Salters was the one that was like, Heidi, you dating anybody? And I was like, no. And
Pastor Debbie.
what do you say when your pastor wants to know about your dating life?
Hello, Pastor Debbie. She's a good little matchmaker, though, isn't she?
Yeah, she is, because it was funny. We were on a bus, and Trent was helping with some tools at the time, so
Trent
he wasn't.
her fella.
Yes.
Yeah.
So he wasn't on the bus at the time. And so I turn around to answer her, and I see everybody in the bus like this, you know, over the bus here, waiting to hear our conversation. And I was like, whoa, not private anymore, you know.
Little Wilsons popping up everywhere.
Yeah. So anyhow, I was like, well, Debbie, I think he would probably not be interested in someone like me because of my kids. That's what I really thought. I thought he's probably at that stage where he's ready to retire. I obviously didn't know him very well because he'll probably never retire. And she said, oh, I think you would be surprised. And I was. So when we got home, he kind of just kept hanging around.
And he had a big long ponytail,
He
right?
did.
Okay.
He did have a long ponytail.
Uh-huh.
Oh,
Yeah,
he
I remember
loves
him, like-
his hair.
He loves his hair.
If he's watching, you should totally post that picture of your big afro. You should do it. If you're watching, you should do it. He has this, he's really sad because he's not in the Guinness Book of World Record, but he swears he could beat the kid that's in there.
Okay,
Because
he's passionate about
his
it.
hair, when he was in college, could touch the sides of a door frame. So it was wider than 36 inches.
Whoa.
So,
yeah, I know, right?
It's naturally curly.
That doesn't happen. He's like, wow, can I borrow some?
He, luckily for me, he does not have the ponytail anymore.
Yeah, he
I wasn't a huge fan
with
of
that.
the ponytail, but I was a huge fan of the character that it takes to grow a ponytail and not give a darn what anybody else thinks about your ponytail. That is very nice of him.
So you got back from the mission trip, and then he was like, what do you mean hanging around? Was he calling? Like, what was going on?
No, he was like coming over and fixing stuff at my house. And then he bought me this book about broken, the first one I think he bought me was about broken men. And it was called Wild at Heart. It's from one of his favorite authors.
That is one of my favorite books.
Yeah, John Eldredge, if anybody likes to read him. Which then led to me reading Captivating, which is the female version. So John's wife, Stacy, wrote that. I suggest both of those books for men and women because it really gave me a lot of insight into my brother, my dad, my grandpas, you know, so on and so forth, my son, a lot of insight into understanding the man's mind and what God intended and all of that.
Had Trent been through a lot relationally too? Had he?
He had dated, but I wouldn't say that he had gotten very, very serious with anybody. He actually prayed for a wife for 20 years. I am the answer to a 20-year-long prayer.
God, you did real good.
I know.
I think that is just such a great story.
Yeah.
Wow, I didn't know that. That is so beautiful.
Yeah.
Okay, so he hands you this book, and so you're reading it. And are you picturing him when you're reading it a little bit at that point?
Yes, and we would have these late night, you know, conversations after the kids went to bed or whatever. Really deep conversations about, you know, why people act the way they do and why they mess up the way they do and what kind of wounds you have and where's that really coming from, you know, and it just, I love that about him, that I can have deep conversations with him. It's one of my favorite things. So
he's also a really great storyteller and good to be around.
Yes.
We got to eat dinner eat lunch with these beautiful people and their family. We all were at Gulf Shores at the same time, so we rendezvoused and had like a 2-hour lunch. All of our kids fell in love with each other. It was so much fun, and I just remember being like, they are a great pair. You guys make a great pair. Okay, so you guys are talking, and then what happens next?
Actually, I had to kind of talk him into calling me his girlfriend. We actually had dinner here in Big
That sounds familiar.
What's your little Italian restaurant here? We went to that one night.
Cabello's?
Yes, we went to that one night. And, you know,
that's a good place
opens
for
the
love.
door.
It's Italian. So.
Yes. He pays for dinner. He does all those romantic things, and then on the way home, we're talking about dating. You know, because apparently we're not dating yet.
Yep.
And and I started crying because at one point he said something like, you know, I might think about that kind of thing, and I'm like, no, that is what we're doing. You know, you don't do this to a single mom heart. You know, is where I'm coming from. So I think when we got home that night, we were dating. But it took him a little while, but and we actually even broke up for a few months. I don't know, not a lot of people know that. We broke up for a few months. A few months later, you know, it was around February-ish, we broke up, and he just had to find his heart. He had to have God to tell him this is the one. And he needed to be alone a little while to do that.
Was that a really hard season for you?
It was.
I was gonna say, I mean, I can't even imagine the hurt and the you know, maybe disappointment to some degree.
Oh yeah.
Did you think it was over, or were you like, he might come back?
It was weird because at first I was really angry, and at first I really kind of felt like it was cold or something, because I thought we were going in a different direction, and God kind of revealed the scripture to me in Ezekiel where, you know, he takes your heart of stone and he makes it flesh. Yes, and he just led me to that and had me hold on to that. And I can remember him saying to me, you know, he loves you, Heidi, just give me time. And by me, I mean God was saying himself, give God time. And that's all I had. That's all I had to go on for a while. And then later on, when Trent came back and Trent explained everything to me, it really was God working on Trent. And so, I mean, he was being completely honest with me when he said, give me time, because I got to work on this guy for a little while, you know? And so I just held on to that until around May or so is when he finally came back around. And then we ended up getting married that following October. So.
And tell me about your kids through this process. I didn't really tell you about that ahead, but how were they? Like when you initially, and then the breakup, and then you guys getting back together and getting married, what was that like for them? Because he is a very involved stepdad with them. He loves them. So you can tell when he's around them, he delights in them. He really does.
He does. But that's actually a huge struggle for us, actually. So dating.
When you live alone that long, it must be very hard to go to a big family too.
Yes, it's a struggle for him in those ways, and it's a struggle for the kids because they had their mom, you know, it's just their mom for, 5 years. And so, while we were dating, they thought he was great. He included them in asking me to marry him and all of that.
Oh my gosh, I need to hear that story.
Yeah. So we went to the fair, and
like the Knox County Fair.
Yes, the Knox County Fair. We got engaged at the Knox County Fair on the Ferris wheel, and
oh my gosh, it's like a movie, you guys.
I know.
It's like a Hallmark Christmas movie up in here.
He wanted
Only
the
it's
kids,
not Christmas, it's summer, but that's fun.
He wanted the kids to be included, so he had asked, my oldest daughter had said, hey Trent, if you were ever going to ask my mom to get married, now would be the time, and he was already ready to do it. And so when we got to the very top, he said, Evie, would now be a good time? And she's like, yeah.
And she was
are you really though? Like, she was in the cart right below us, all three of our kids, and we were right above them. And he goes, yeah, I'm going to do it right now. And she's like,
so
really?
The most. I love it.
So anyhow, that's and they were involved in our ceremony. They have always been very involved in all of that, and that was really important to us, so that they would feel like they were a part of everything, and not just that things were happening to them, but that they were part of it. So we did like a blending ceremony in our wedding, where we made a painting together, and we each had a color, and the colors blended together, and that sort of thing. And our Pastor Debbie, talked to them about what all that meant, and kind of ministered to them in that way, so that they would understand on their level. So that was really important to us. But today, that's a struggle. There are some days where, they're in their teenage years. They're starting to get to their teenage years, some of them. And so,
be nearest Lord Jesus.
And their dad lives 2 hours away, and fathers are very, very important during this time in their life. And so even though he can be like a father figure, they've made it very clear to him that he's not their dad, and there's that struggle some days. But I think for the most part, they absolutely know that he chooses to love them no matter what. Right. And I think that that's really important, especially if you're a step parent out there. It's probably really hard to separate your own feelings and to not be offended or crushed sometimes when the kids don't return. But you got to remember that they're emotionally just not mature enough yet to maybe respond the right way to you. And so just give them time. And that's what Trent's kind of doing, is just giving them time. They know he loves them, and that's the most important thing. But to retaliate would not be appropriate, because then that's just going to create a divide,
And making them choose is really unhealthy too.
Right.
They shouldn't have to choose.
They
Everybody,
they
the more
didn't
people
choose this
who love
life.
our kids, the better off they are.
Absolutely.
Really.
Absolutely.
And speaking of, I do want to say, going back to what we talked about before with the abuse that your daughter endured, I have a friend who's really an amazing woman of God, and she's a social worker, and she said this. She said, my years in CPS that preceded parenthood shaped the conversation of healthy boundaries, and having my kids list at least 5 safe people they could tell aside from us.
Oh, that's
That
big.
is a brilliant idea. That's not something that I've really talked with my kids about. So I'm going to do that.
Yeah.
I think that's great encouragement and exhortation for all of you parents out there. And if you're not a parent, tell your friends that have kids kids, I want to be a safe person for them.
Right, absolutely.
I want to be somebody that they can trust.
That's really
I think
great
that's such good advice. I had to share that. I know we're backing up. Beautiful wedding, so romantic, they said.
Who said that? I can't.
And Robin Ryan.
Oh, yeah. Oh, Robin almost caught their crap on fire during the wedding.
Oh.
We had fireworks and they didn't go off right. And Robin was like, Heidi, I know there's more fireworks down there. Where everybody was leaving and they kind of given up on them. So her and her husband, who had just had some knee replacements done, so he wasn't running very fast, went down there to light these fireworks. And once they were lit, they kind of just got out of Dodge and they dropped the paper. Well, the paper started to create a fire, and the soybeans are like ready to harvest right next door, and so they're very dry. And you saw all the Hinkle men running with buckets of water. I was like,
they're all farmers. We didn't say that.
Oh,
they're
sorry.
all farmers. Yes.
That was
so
their
these
crop.
were their crops that they had.
No crops were damaged in our wedding.
Heidi, your wedding was really lit. You're welcome.
So true.
That was extra. Okay, you mentioned mission work, and
yes.
that's how you met Trent. I mean, and, well, maybe you really got to know him.
Yes.
But more than that, I mean, this is the heartbeat of who you are. And
Absolutely.
we talked about nursing, but that's really an extension of your life and work as a nurse, and it's also an extension of who you are as a believer.
Absolutely.
So tell me, how did you get into mission work? How did it become addictive for you? Because essentially it is. And where have you been? Let's talk about all that.
Okay. So I said earlier, my first mission trip was in college. And then whenever I was married the first time, I didn't do a whole lot of mission work. But then whenever I got back involved with Thursday Church, there was one night whenever Pastor Debbie did a sermon on 20 Seconds of Courage. And she had all these clipboards up on the stage. And she said, if you had 20 seconds of courage, what would you just sign up for that you think that you want to do, even though maybe you don't think that you're good enough to do it, because God's going to equip you and He's going to make it happen, So I went up there and I signed up for the Guatemala trip for the next year. And I was a single mom with 3 kids. I didn't think I had the money to pay for a trip. I just didn't, so it really was me going out on a limb. I didn't think it could happen. And sure enough, God showed up in a big way through fundraising and everything. Provided everything I needed. I didn't pay for that trip at all out of my own pocket. He provided all of it. And since then, I've gone every year. We've taken my daughter, Eddie, and my son, Gabe, went for the first time this last year. And my prayer is that one of my kids will have a mission heart, because I really, really want to travel the world with them.
Yes.
But we've been to Guatemala quite a few times. I think at this point, maybe I've done 5 houses, I think, there.
You go with Casas por Cristo, who builds
Casas por Cristo.
On-the-job training for their volunteers. You just
Absolutely.
go down there and they tell you what to do, and you
There's,
you build a house. I mean, they could teach somebody like me to build a house.
In 3 days.
What
It
in
is
the world?
amazing. And to them, it's a mansion. And they are located in Mexico, Dominican Republic, and Guatemala right now. They're going to expand. So check it out. They will take people, even like if you have like a week off at Christmas or something like that, they'll just take people. You don't have to necessarily be with a specific church or anything like that. They'll team you up with a team.
And is it sort of like Habitat in the fact that the families that receive the houses have to invest before they can sort of...
Oh, yes.
Like there's a process that they walk through to prepare them to be homeowners as well. You're not just giving people a house who never have any experience with that at all.
Right. So one thing they have to do is they have to have the land. And they have to clear the land before we get there. And then a lot of times they'll actually take the week off work, which is a huge investment for them, and help us and be there every day working alongside us.
Cool.
It is. It's super cool. And another thing is Casas por Cristo actually partners with the ministers in that country. So the ministers are the ones who are actually picking the families. So it's people that they know really do have a need, and they're either trying to get them plugged into the church, or they've been plugged into the church and they just know that they really have this need, and that this need would minister to lots of people. So I think that that's really important, that they're partnering with local churches,
I
and that
agree
local
completely.
churches are involved in the whole process.
Because you and I have a huge heart for the local church anyway.
Yes.
We believe it's the hope of the world. And so if you're not in a local church, get there. But anyway, that's just an extra.
Yeah.
Okay, tell me about traveling to Ghana with Micah 6'8". Because I know that was like a dream trip. I mean, to get to do what you're best at in that situation. I mean, that must have been so special.
Oh, it was so special. And I feel like that trip in general was very, very special. So in March, I went with Micah 6'8" to Ghana, Africa.
Hi, Christy, if you're still watching.
I hope she's there.
Anybody else go on that trip that's watching? We'll find out.
Okay, good. Anyhow, just the bonds that you create with all of those people. I mean, we're still texting each other all the time now, even, it's almost 6 months later. We went and did medical. So there's Christy. And the other cool thing was there were so many other parts of Micah 6'8" project that were built into the trip. So Jacob's Wells was part of it too. We got to see one of the wells be commissioned.
You know how I feel about that.
Yeah, so that was huge for us. And one of our nurses that came with us, Janelle, she's Catholic. And this well was located right next to a Catholic church. Oh, and it was just like a special thing for her. It was so cool. And then we got to go to a special village called Ahiva Kope. I don't know how I always remember that other than it kind of sounds like I have hope. And so it was like going, back in time is what it kind of felt like. It was, you had to get on these very long boats, and Africans don't really worry much about weight limits. And I'm a little bit of a bigger girl, and so there's probably deadly animals in that water.
That's probably why the Lord hadn't allowed me to go yet, is because I gotta slim down a little bit. I don't want to break the elevator. Not then. But anyway.
So anyhow, you get to this village, and while we're on our way, you're watching women come out of this tree line, go down, dig their water, put it on their head, carry it back, and to think that that's how you get your water every day, that's huge. And so we went back there, and we actually did a medical day back there with Isaac's Dream, which is another group, kind of like Micah 6'8", only they built a primary school in that village. So a school for little kids, whereas Micah 6'8's vocational school for adults. So there's a little bit of a difference there. We also got to see one of the two of the Micah 6'8 graduating classes. So we got to watch them get their certificate, and like the ones who went through the sewing group, they each got a sewing machine. So they each get their sewing machine, they put it on their head. Everybody puts everything on their heads there, and you carry it all around. And so it was really, really special. And then we also, in the middle of all of that, packed in 3 days of medical treatment to people. And
they were lined up for
a long
time.
They were lined up for a long time. That's probably one of the hardest parts, is that they talk, and so words getting out, so people are coming from farther and farther away, and then at one point you just have to say, okay, we're closed now, and
we can't treat anyone else.
And there's people sitting there, and they may not get to see another medical person for a couple of years, until we go back. And so I think that that's a really great thing that Christy's doing, where she's taking them back every couple of years to just make sure that there's some treatment being offered.
Christy, I know you've got a trip planned. It may be already full, but if it's not, maybe you could give some information about that in the comments. Also, I just want to shout out that our friend Christy is doing a women's conference with my friend Brooke and Blythe and lots of other ladies that are all things gals. So go support that. It's free. My friend Kristen Farrell, who is a guest on All the Things, she's going to be preaching. And I think she's talking out of Colossians, because I saw her do her big poster board right now on Instagram today. So I think she's preaching from Colossians. You don't want to miss it. And it's free to sign up. So go to that, and you can meet Christy and maybe even talk to her about the mission work that she does in Ghana. So.
And Micah 6'8's having the Night of Freedom in October. So
Very good.
Go and check out that too, so you can support it that way as well.
And that'll be in Montgomery, I think, this year. So anyway, get involved if you're interested in knowing more. I know Heidi will answer your questions, and Christy definitely will too. So okay, let's talk talk about the last thing that I want to cover, and then I'm going to ask you what you're loving right now. All the things you're loving, if you will. Your son has a struggle called ADHD, and
Yes.
2 of my kids struggle with that as well. And I just want to know from your perspective, I know like the challenges and joys that we face, but what are some of the challenges and joys of parenting a kid who may be different from other kids? And I actually had somebody that I'm friends with contact me on Instagram today and said, I'm so glad that you guys are talking about this tonight, because my kid is struggling. They have ADD, so they don't have a hyperactivity, which maybe even makes it harder in some ways. And she was talking about some of the struggles as they get older, how difficult that's been. So I want to hear from you some of the challenges, some of the joys that come with that, because there are joys. But sometimes you got to look kind of deep some days. I mean, that's for any kid that we parent, no matter what they've been through, you know, but sometimes you got to dig deep, and sometimes they have to dig deep to love us too. So
Yes, absolutely.
So talk to me about that.
Yeah, so my son has ADHD. I think, you know, the struggles, some of them are very obvious, you know, but I think one that hits home for me, especially as a nurse, is that that stigma of there's nothing really wrong with them.
You can't see it. So
because they can't see it. And that's like that with any mental illness. And that, I hate that. To me, a diseased heart or a diseased lung is just as important as a brain that doesn't function the same.
A good word.
You know, and so that's something that kind of I struggle with. But because it is with the brain, I try not to actually use the word wrong with my son. I try not to say things like there's something wrong with you, you know, because I don't want him thinking that way, even though I know that that's what the world is kind of saying to him. You know, obviously if I have to take medicine, something's not right. I'm trying to correct something, you know. I think for us this year, pray for us, we took him off of his medicine. And so we are trying this out for a little while because he had a huge growth spurt. And one of the things that I learned was through puberty and all of that, that there is a 20% chance that he may not have ADHD once he goes through the different spurts of growth through puberty. I can tell you that he wasn't one of the 20% this time around.
Swing and a miss, right?
Darn.
But you have to laugh. You have to find a joy.
Yes.
You really, really do.
Yes.
I was at an appointment today with our whole family, and everybody was out of sync. I mean, everybody. Not just the kids that struggle with ADHD, everybody. And I was just like, you know, I hope that the people who see us right now know that, you know, there are some challenges that they're overcoming that other kids don't have to overcome. But we have to laugh or we will cry.
So, yes.
And I know all of you parents that have kids at all know what we're talking about. So you got to find the joy. You got to say, oh, he wasn't one of the 20%. Let's just laugh about it and move on, right?
Yes. But we're still going to try it because, just like you said, there are joys with it. And one of the things we've noticed is some of his crankiness when the medicine was in its low levels, he had kind of like an exaggerated crankiness about him that he doesn't have right now, and we're kind of digging that, and so even though it's kind of, I have to remind him, you know, 15 times to do something because he literally cannot remember what I just said 2 seconds ago. We still don't like the crankiness in the morning, and I would rather trade that off, I guess. Maybe because Trent gets him up in the morning. Sometimes.
Sorry, Trent.
He's loving not having the crankiness right now, too, let me tell you. He doesn't have a gait, so a lot of times with attention deficit, the way the neurons work in their brain is whatever's on their brain just comes right out. That's why they can say really hurtful things sometimes, and they don't realize that they hurt people, is because it just comes right out. Same thing happens every time they show compassion too, though. They don't think about it; it just comes right out. So
I see that with our oldest son.
There are moments where they say something, and you're like, "Wow, that was deep," or "Wow, you really care," because they really do.
Yeah.
It's like they feel every emotion on an exaggerated level.
Which is really fun when you're talking about puberty. That's a good time.
Yeah.
Right?
I will say this, though, about the gait. Last night we were praying, and my niece recently had her tonsils taken out. And because Gabe doesn't think about it before it comes out, he's like, and we prayed for Sadie's tonsils. oh wait, she doesn't have tonsils. Like, we all just laughed during that prayer, you know. So he's very funny. But I would definitely say the gait is sometimes a hard thing.
Do you think that he has a greater level of sensitivity to others who are struggling? Because I definitely see that with especially our son that deals with some issues. He has sensory processing disorder too, and I see like parents have said to me, like my kid was sitting by them, you know, herself on the bus, and Ted came and sat next to her because he knew, and it's like, because I think they struggle. Sometimes they're able to kind of sniff out people who are also struggling.
Absolutely.
And sometimes it comes out, you know, on the other end too, like you were saying, but sometimes I feel like there's that heightened awareness.
I've noticed that with Gabe, even like for me, like if I'm having a bad day, he's
sure.
my first kid that knows, like, hey mom, what's going on? Are you okay? You know, and that's a great thing. Yes. That's an intuitive thing that you can't teach.
Right.
And so you just gotta look for those highlights and those blessings. Yeah.
And, you know, if you have questions, a great person to start with is your doctor. Your kids' doctors care about, you know, hopefully they care about what's going on with them, and just have some conversations. And if you are struggling and your kid has ADHD or ADD, please reach out to us. We'd love to just encourage you a little bit. And we may be looking you up for encouragement later, because that's what I found.
We need each other.
In my, you know, in my support system, which you're a part of, and lots of other people are a part of. Sometimes you know, it's like triage. Sometimes one of us is on the table, you know. And that's the beauty of having a community that understands your needs, is that, you know, everybody can trade off and be in the emergency case for the day. So there you go. Okay, before we head out, first of all, you guys loved Heidi so much. Aww. Thank you for being honest. Thank you for talking about things that are hard to talk about. And I'm just believing God that He's gonna you know, protect more kids through this broadcast, that He's gonna help those that may be struggling with you know, divorce or walking through co-parenting, step parenting, all that stuff, and also just encouraged by this wonderful woman of God. So what are all the things you're loving right now? Can you tell me? Just tell me a couple things.
Okay.
Because you watch the show, so you know I do this segment every time.
I do. Strawberry cream pies from McDonald's.
Oh, like, my word! I love that. Nobody's ever picked that before.
Oh, well, I have like one waiting for me in the car, and I had them before I came here. So
you got the two for $1 deal.
I hope my sister-in-law's not watching. She like is really healthy, and I'm really not. So.
Oh, your sister-in-law was my aerobics, country heat instructor for a really long time. And she is so nice. She's like, love yourself and take care of, eat something fun every now and then. She is so nice about that. So I appreciate that. Yes. I might take it to the extreme, but we love you, Lee. And she loves us still.
That's right.
Beautiful.
That's right.
She needs to come on the show.
She should.
Lee, come on the show if you're watching.
Yes,
okay.
Absolutely.
So you're loving strawberry cream pies.
I am
the pumpkin pie girl, and they did away with those pretty much.
Maybe bring them back in like the fall.
Let it be, Lord. Let it be so.
Because strawberry cream they don't have all the time. Like this is like a seasonal thing, which is why I'm in love with it right now.
The pumpkin is the best. I mean, I'm sorry. It's even better than strawberry. But okay, so you're loving strawberry cream pies.
I have a few. I love Chicago pizza, so I may just have like a pie thing going on.
Okay, pizza pie, regular pie.
Yeah, I like pies. I like carbs.
Me too.
I love records. I don't know if anybody else loves records.
That's really cool. I didn't know
I
that
have a lot of record players at my house because my husband blesses me with them all the time. And honestly, you mentioned it earlier, but I am loving Larcy's Facebook page. If you guys aren't on it, you need to get on it.
Let me see if I can put it up there. Seth may not be able to do it. I don't know. I'll try it.
The Vintage Revelation company is fantastic. I just started volunteering at the Faith Store, so I'm loving that now. This bracelet here is from the Faith Store.
Tell them what the Faith Store is.
So the Faith Store is a business that Thursday Church owns right next door to Thursday Church on Main Street. And Christy Ritz is managing it now.
Yeah,
and
we love Christy.
There are
we
all
love you, Christy.
kinds of new and exciting things happening there, but basically we have lots of different countries represented to include the U.S. and the different mission-focused groups that we have represented there. We are selling their products or selling things from these countries, from the native people themselves, and giving back to their communities, and it's all in an effort to prevent human trafficking, sex slavery, all of those types of things, empowering women, just giving people a hand up to help them in their current country, their current situation.
She got a Jacob's Well sweatshirt
Yeah.
right before school started, and it's not been cold enough to wear yet, but I know she's really excited. So head over there for all your shopping needs. It's a great place to buy gifts. It's a great place. You guys still have coffee over there? The coffee is what powers my mom's group every week that I go to, is Face Store Coffee. So we feel pretty loyal to you guys because you keep America running. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
Well, it has been a true joy to have you, and it's great to have you guys back.
Thank you guys.
We've missed you this summer, and we're glad you came back to us, and we'll see you next Tuesday. Oh, sorry.
Draw it.
I'm going to let you draw it. Here, let me stir it up.
Forget the most important
Dun, dun,
part.
dun. Oh my gosh, I'm so excited right now. Okay, half off a registration retreat ticket.
Okay.
That didn't make sense.
Number one. Who's number one? Seth?
Brandy Murray.
Oh my gosh! Yay! Hi, Brandy. Okay.
She's in my small group.
Oh my
That
gosh.
wasn't planned.
Oh my word. Yeah, it was totally fair. But that is so cool. Oh, I hope Brandy gets to come. Half off your
so
registration.
exciting.
We're going to have a great time. If you want to sign up, even if you didn't win, you can still sign up. The link's in the links all over there. Seth put it up a couple times, so you can go visit it. And next week, I will host my friend from afar, Erin DeRusha is her name. She runs Blue 4 Designs, and she is also a Route 91 shooting survivor. She has an incredible story.
Wow.
I have goosebumps just thinking about what she's going to tell us next week about how God protected her and her sisters, and the incredible community that's come out of the people who risk their lives to save her. I mean, just an incredible story. So come back next week and hear Erin. We'll be doing that live via satellite, I guess is what you say.
Yeah.
So come back and hear Erin's story next week, and share this with a friend. Tell somebody that you love them, and share this story with them. God bless you. We'll see you next week on All the Things. Thanks.
Bye.